Sweet, we're live. Hi
Awesome.
everyone, excited to do this time around with Yinka. He's been a super active member of our community. Um, Super excited to have you today with me, Yinka.
Yeah, no. Hi, Nico. Super excited to be here. Huge fan of Octant. So this is great. This is really cool, and I'm excited to talk to these projects that have gotten into Epoch 12. Yeah, as someone who was also a part of the Epoch a very long time ago, or not so long ago. It's really cool to have these conversations and just interview these folks. And I'm particularly excited about this series. What it takes to secure Ethereum, because huge fan of Ethereum, and I just can't wait to get right into it.
Yeah, same here. And maybe let's start with quick intros before we bring up our participating projects. I'm Nico. You've probably seen me around doing these Octant live streams. I'm the ecosystem lead at Octant, and yeah, always doing these kind of activities with the community and partnerships. So excited to chat with you all. What about you, Yinka?
Yeah, no, Nico is the greatest of all time. Shout out to Nico.
Thank you, man.
Yinka, I'm a developer relations engineer and educator. I spend the bulk of my time educating developers and onboarding folks into the Ethereum ecosystem. So producing a ton of technical and non-technical content to ensure that folks sort of understand the technology. Currently heads deep into artificial intelligence and local language models, that I think with everyone else. But Ethereum still has a very special place in my heart. So I will forever be in this ecosystem and just like contributing, supporting the ecosystem and being a part of it.
Sweet, awesome, Yinka. And now, without further ado, let me introduce our projects for today. We have Max from Aestus Relay and Jonathan from ETHStaker. Hello, guys. How's it going?
Hi.
Hey, thanks
Good
for having
morning,
us.
good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are.
Good
Great to
morning, good
have you
afternoon, good
guys.
evening. Great to have you.
It's morning for me.
Uh,
It's afternoon for me. It's like 3 p.m.
Nice.
Morning.
Morning,
Awesome.
Jonathan.
Cool. All right. So let's kick it off with a quick round of introductions about yourselves and the project that you're representing. Jonathan, do you want to go first?
Yeah. You're hearing me all right?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Great. Perfect. Yeah. So I'm Jonathan Meyer, and I'm with ETHStaker. I'm serving as the executive director, so working on anything that we do, and that includes helping to promote when we are in something like the Octant Epoch 12 here. So, but yeah, ETHStaker, for those that maybe are not familiar, is a nonprofit that's been around since 2020, before the Beacon Chain launched on Ethereum, and we have our mission is to support the health and decentralization of the staking ecosystem. So we are very grateful to be included and to participate in this kind of public good funding round that Octant does, because it's so important to like the sustainability and our long-term viability. We are community supported, and so we really appreciate having the stage to share what we're working on and how people can support it. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, big fan of ETHStaker. Learned a lot from your guys' workshops. And can't wait. Like I need to still run my node, but I'm gonna do it. I promise.
Yeah, I mean,
At
I
some
know
point.
last year I know we worked together with Octant, right, to do the there was a workshop last summer, and that's the cool thing. We'll get into it, I guess, but there's like all kinds of resources that are always in our knowledge base. There's the Discord community, kind of people just passionate about this, ready to help. It kind of amazes me every time I go and experience it. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have you, Jonathan. Max, wanna go next? Quick intro about yourself and Asus.
Sure. Max. I've been working on the Aestus Relay with my co-founder for the last 3.5 years. It's nice to have Jonathan introduce himself first, because Aestus is really a kind of child or a sister project of some of the work that ETHStaker has been doing. Aestus is fundamentally a hardcore infrastructure project connecting validators and builders and trying to get fair value for the price of blocks. It's a critical part of the ecosystem because it touches the kind of boundary of the protocol and the real world. Aestus has about 700,000 validators connected to it, and is conducting an auction every 12 seconds, 24/7, 365 days a year. We're non-censoring, and we've never charged or tried to raise any money from it. So community support, particularly over the last few years from Octant, has been essential to pay our bills, and we really appreciate being included in this round.
Awesome. Great to hear, Max. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yinka, do you want to kick us off with the first question?
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to you guys. Shout out to ETHStaker and audience. Thank you for the intro. I think one of the questions I'll just hit the ground running with is how are your projects, relevant to securing and validating Ethereum in 2026? It's a different landscape. I think so many things have changed in the past couple of years. And how would you say you are relevant in ensuring that Ethereum is secure?
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, Jonathan, please go first.
Yeah, we can go in. Sure. So, I mean, a big part of our focus is in supporting like the education and knowledge and like resources that solo stakers use. And so, I mean, there's many different ways to stake, right? You can stake, you can run your own node, you can stake from home with your own capital, you can stake in the cloud, you can stake with a liquid staking protocol, you can, use DVT and different ways of operating a node. Like, so it's the explosion of ways to actually run a node and stake has only grown over the years. And on top of it, the network has continued to evolve with every successive upgrade. Last year, there were 2, Pectra and Fusaka. And then this year, there will be another called Glamsterdam. So basically, it's relevant because if those solo stakers, those that are like, and the independent staker who may be running a mini pool or a liquid staking node, those people need education and resourcing and knowledge-based details and support. And we provide that. And without that, they could cease to exist. They could diminish in their sort of their number of them. And Ethereum, one of the value propositions of Ethereum to many people out there looking at this space is that it has this like truly decentralized backbone. And so we are really committed to supporting that. So that's the long and short of it, I think, at a high level.
Oh, we lost your audio, Yinka. Somehow.
Should I jump in while he?
Yeah, please do, Max.
I'll give our take. I mean, I agree with everything Jonathan said, and Aestus has a similar kind of spirit, right? Over the last few years since the merge, I mean, the whole industry of staking has professionalized, and one of the ways it's done that is by the institutional operators trying to seek out yield versus in higher numbers than their competitors. And relays are this kind of touch point between in the way that this game kind of develops. It's essential that we have public goods infrastructure in this space until we have better cryptographic or protocol primitives to improve the status quo. And we might get into some of the Glamsterdam upgrade later, but it's it's never a straight line. So relays like Aestus and others, are there to ensure that the market remains fair in kind of ever increasing competition.
Sweet, thank you, Max. Let's test your mic, Yinka. Are you back?
Testing 1, 2. I think it works now.
Perfect.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Yes, sir. Sweet.
Okay.
All right. And we also have Lanski, the CEO of DappNode, here with us today.
Hello there. How you doing,
Hello,
guys?
sir.
Yo,
Good. How are you?
Excuse
Great to have you.
my little delay. I'm here in Berlin Blockchain Week. It's super exciting. So I got engrossed into the conversation, but I'm here now.
All good.
Sweet.
Great to have you. Do you want to give a quick intro about yourself and DappNode?
Yeah, certainly. So DappNode is a project, a free open source project for technological self-sovereignty, which means that we help people interact with technology in a self-sovereign way, which basically means without third parties, without having to ask for permission, without anybody being able to censor your access to this technology. For the longest amount of time, this has meant blockchains, because blockchains are this technology that if you own the node, if you own the validator, then you have direct access to the network. Nobody can tell you that you cannot access the network. Nobody can gatekeep your access. Nobody can censor your transactions. And therefore, we set out to make it extremely easy for non-technical people to, with a couple of clicks, being able to run a node or a validator for different blockchains. Ethereum is one of them, Gnosis Chain, Luxo, Avalanche, Near, Starknet, Logos very soon. So basically, you should be able to control the technology that makes your life better without third parties. And currently, we're also going into self-sovereign AI, because AI is a technology that we cannot let the big companies have on their own. Otherwise, they will control our future. We need to control our access to AI, and that means local AI and verifiably private AI through a verifiably private API.
Awesome. Thank you, Lansky. We asked Jonathan and Max what, so how is your project relevant to secure and validating Ethereum? I think you started answering that, but do you want to give us a little bit more information about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard part of Jonathan's answer, and to be fair, his answer was basically perfect. There are two ways to think about it. I just mentioned before the self-sovereignty way. One should be able to own the access to their validators. There's some noise coming from some mic. Maybe, yes, that was perfect. I don't know which one it was, but that's great. So one of them has to do with self-sovereignty and being able to own and access this this technology by yourself, and running your validators, your own validators, also helps you keep the entirety of the revenue, not have to share revenue by itself. But then there's the other part, which is Ethereum is more valuable the more decentralized it is, the more credibly neutral it is, the less capturable it is. And in order to be less capturable, we need to put a lot of nodes in different geographies, in different electrical networks, in different political jurisdictions, et cetera, et cetera. And the more spread out it is, the more valuable it is for everyone. And the more centralized it is, the easier it is to capture, and therefore the less valuable the whole Ethereum becomes. And I think we have to see how the main protocol has been really good at keeping those assurances that it is neutral, it is decentralized. But as a solo staker, I feel kind of cheated. We are seeing PBS and proposer build and separation. We're thinking all of these things that are coming on top of Ethereum that are outside of the protocol, that are bringing all of the power and all of the economic value to be captured by just a few players. And I feel cheated because while Ethereum has done everything, just because it's more convenient or more useful to do it the other way, to do it the way using flashbots or using block builders. Block builders capture all of this value, and we as the block producers themselves, the ones that put the block on the chain, we have to be happy with like the peanuts that they give us, the 0.001 ETH, while they capture millions of MEV fees. And yeah, I think we should push back as solo stakers a little bit on this. And going back, the last point that I want to make is, in order to be a part of this network, one should not have to be technical. And even if you're technical, you should not have to spend hours on DevOps. So that's the problem that we set out to solve at the beginning. You set it and forget it, point and click, set up your node, and then let it run and use it whenever you want.
Cool. Thank you, Lanski. That was actually super interesting. I would love to ask you all guys about this. Like, Lanski, you talked about like all these things building on top of the main protocol that are capturing economic value. And there's like very few. Like, how do you see this, well, affecting maybe the network and like the different players, maybe how it can be used in our advantage? How can we decentralize it, and maybe what are the risks that are involved there? Max, do you wanna take it?
So can you just repeat the question? Sorry, I'm not sure I got it quite.
Yeah, so Lanski was talking about all these other things that are on top of the protocol that are capturing the economic value. And yeah, I just want to hear more takes on that. Like, maybe what are the risks? Like, there's few players who are there doing that. Like, if there is a chance to decentralize it or add more players. I don't know, just your general thoughts about that.
Yeah, well, I can certainly speak to the domain that I'm most kind of involved in, which is MEV. There are two kind of long-standing views, right? The first is that like MEV is a kind of toxic capture of users' transactions, a sort of malignancy on top of the protocol, and the other is that it is a natural phenomenon that results in a kind of in a blockchain which has ordered value. And there are certainly different and complicated academic takes about whether you'd even want to try and get rid of something like MEV, and various blockchains have tried. And this is partly about technology. Like, our technology is getting better, and we are increasingly finding options like encrypted mempools, which may provide a future where there is less toxicity. But we, in 2026, where we are today, much of this pressure has to be resolved between the protocol and DeFi and the outside world. And at the moment, that we, the best we have are the rails that we've built. There are
Max.
Yes.
I really trust your opinion on that, coming from a relay, which is you're probably the person that knows the most of the MEV ecosystem here. But I think my take is not so much about the MEV existing. That's, as you say, a consequence of the way the blockchains work. And what I'm the most upset about is that we are being sold all of this decentralization, and we know how important it is, and the whole value of Ethereum is, so Ethereum is getting a lot of value from the fact that it's decentralized. That's why it's the most decentralized network and the only that's fully credibly neutral. And at the same time, it is not the ones that make it decentralized that are capturing this economic value. And this disparity is what grinds my gears a little bit. And I hear a good number is that I think 90% of the transactions right now are fed from wallets to block builders via private order flow, and not through the mempool, so outside of the protocol. And it is this dynamic that bothers me the most, not the fact that there is MEV in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the counter, the counter to that point is that the reason that that's probably preferable is because if they go through the public mempool today, users get front run, back run sandwiched, and the way the current system works is that there is some, albeit limited, protection using these things, complicated things called order flow auctions, which pay users back. I mean, look, the bottom line here is that the technology isn't good enough in the protocol to protect users, and the question is, what's the complicated journey that we're going to go on to improve user experiences in the DeFi landscape? And that already puts to one side all of the other important and legitimate use cases for Ethereum, which may not include some kind of financial exchange, right? It might be something else.
No, I agree.
Sorry, I don't have a simpler answer to it, right?
Yeah. I think it's because there isn't, and actually you're giving tremendous insight here. If Nico allows me, I might do another follow-up. I'm so sorry.
Please, this is super interesting. We're loving it. We're loving it.
And there is a tendency. So it's the same public goods, right? Like, but I think at this point, at the rate of Ethereum and the Ethereum rewards that we're getting, I'd say that most validators could almost be considered public goods, especially the home stakers and the centralized validators, because they're getting a 2.6, 2.7% return on their ETH when Ethereum drops 6% in a day, a 40% in 2 months. The swings are too wild for it to justify any homo economicus intent of staking and being profitable, right? So there's one more thing to this, which is that there's this plan on reducing issuance on Ethereum, and then it'll become almost all of these solo stakers will be put at a loss directly. So it feels to me that we're moving, and I don't require an answer, not from you, Max, nor from anybody else. It's just like I want to call the attention that we are sort of destroying one of the things that makes Ethereum ops, like and I'm doing this on purpose with the language of the Ethereum Foundation, because the Ethereum Foundation fills their mouth with things like censorship resistant, open source, security, and then somehow, and for reasons that I also understand, there are arguments to reduce issuance. Somehow, we are undermining the solo stakers, which are the ones who underpin this. A great deal of Ethereum being the most crops blockchain that exists.
Do you mind if I give a brief answer to that, and then Jonathan will give a better answer than I can?
Go ahead.
Please do, yeah, Max, go ahead.
Which is that there are these things called economies of scale, and then we do this magical thinking where we somehow try to imagine that there's some kind of perfect way of drawing a curve which gets rid of the economies of scale. And Vitalik used to talk about the altruism from stakers, and for a long time, we hoped that solo stakers in particular would get these airdrops, which would somehow recover our costs. In the end, it's much more capital efficient for a solo staker to stake with a staking pool. That's the truth. But you miss the fun of being a solo staker using your DappNode if you do that, right? I don't think there are good answers to these things, but I do think Ethereum is moving from the land of like people, running homebrew infrastructure boxes at home into a world where things are going to get more complicated, and we're going to, local block building won't even be possible. We're going to a whole new ZK infrastructure and architecture, and we're trying to take on some of the bigger blockchains like Solana while maintaining kind of, the core thesis of decentralization. But we are not, we're not headed in a. It's not going to be smooth sailing, and I wouldn't expect there to be 10 times as many solo stakers tomorrow as there are today. That's not the direction we're headed in.
Yeah, I would
good insights here. Yeah,
I would say
Jonathan,
too, though. I mean, there's. Can you guys hear me? Okay, yeah, it's unmuted. Basically, though, there's in the next few years, there's many things coming with like lean Ethereum and the ability to be in a tester, and what does that look like? I guess I bring this up, and in the context of issuance, because there's so many things where like the hood is open on this vehicle, right? And it's being worked on from like so many different directions. And like issuance is just one topic where there's probably like 12 different very unique opinions about what you should do about issuance, and they don't all really agree with each other because of, for whatever reasons. And actually one of the things we've done over just at ETHStaker over the last couple of weeks is Hanny on our team created a website called ETHdebate.com, which was created solely for the purpose of like mapping out the issuance conversation. And it's pretty cool. Like we kind of culled all the different arguments that we had seen out there and kind of mapped it, linked everything to each other. Yeah, ETHdebate.com. It'll redirect you to like a /issuance, because that's the only topic really like deeply covered right now on the website, on that website. But yeah, like it's complicated, like navigating this and negotiating those types of changes between so many different groups, and like the Ethereum governance process in itself is no easy task. Topics like this are probably the hardest ones to do properly and get, maintaining these principles of censorship resistance and viability for individual stakers that make it decentralized in the first place. So I think there's a lot of people out there that care about this, keeping it that way, and building it stronger that way. And one thing I've heard is that, there's kind of this, I think this was at Dev Connect, where somebody was saying like, yeah, like Ethereum is really good at like scaling and making these changes, but also trying to not compromise on the things that matter to it. And it's like, there's a lot of people like working deeply hard and creatively to try to make that happen. So you look at like protocol upgrades that are coming, like Fossil and ePBS, and it's like an effort to kind of like codify these things that separate proposers and builders, or make transactions be forced to be included so you can't be censored. And so yeah, I just think there's, not sure where to conclude with this, but like it's I would invite people to go read some of these different arguments on these topics, look at the resources that are out there and engage. Like the more people we have engaging, the more these get addressed, and we move out of a place of feeling stuck and towards a place of being having new kind of participants push it forward and come up with creative solutions, because this is really an evolving technology. And being a staker in this world, we need people who care and who are coming up with these new ideas and like engaging with the community. And I think it's cool, like this cohort right here, like DappNode and Aestus, like we are all kind of very aligned community participants in like what we care about. So it's pretty cool to have this conversation going with you guys.
Yeah, no, that was pretty cool. Interesting way to drive the conversation, and I like the perspective everyone brings in. It's just an open conversation, and there is a lot of work, evidently, that needs to be done in the Ethereum ecosystem. A lot of conversations that need to be had, and a lot of problems that need to be solved. Which leads us to a very interesting question that I pose to everyone here: is what would happen if you cease to exist? Right? What will happen if ETHStaker ceases to exist today? What will happen if DappNode ceases to exist today? And what will happen if Aestus ceases to exist today? So, Jonathan, I'm curious to know what you think about that and what your response is.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly would be a loss to lose the resources and advocacy that I think we do. I've heard so many stories from people, and this goes for like the others too. I think you guys are all really valuable, where there's resources and tools out there available that people are using to learn and onboard into this like new kind of unknown world. I mean, it's still new. I know that, like ETHStaker started in 2020 before the Beacon Chain launched, but we've been trying to like figure out this ecosystem since then. And it's a constant process of that. So the whole reason why ETHStaker existed is because a few friends were like, hey, we want to participate in this, and how do we like help each other learn? And I feel like that same ethos is what's making it still exist today, is because every 6, 12, 18 months, there's like some kind of new significant change where people need to learn and be able to, you know, participate and grow with this. And so that alone would be a loss. The participation on like the Discord where people help each other and learn, and the community there is a critical part of like the base layer of what Ethereum is. And certainly we're not the only ones. There's many communities out there that care about staking and keeping Ethereum decentralized. But I think the voice of the ETHStaker is an important one, and the resources and community kind of pillars that we've had would be missed, and would be something that, yeah, we'd definitely like to keep going, because I mean, just for me, even personally, like I've benefited from, and that's why I got involved. You know, my own story is that after using the resources and learning and growing with it, I wanted to give back to the effort and the mission. And so, you know, there's a whole, like when we go to DevCon and DevConnect, and there's these node operator hubs and things like that that we participate in, there's a whole real living community of people out there that are learning and growing and sharing their setups and their projects and their businesses that they've built in this ecosystem. And having that be well supported is just something we feel is very important. So, you know, I think Ethereum, I think if you lose community public goods like ETHStaker or like the others here, like you lose something that makes it unique in its decentralized character, and that differentiates it, like significantly differentiates it from other options out there. And I think it would just be a loss. It would be a loss to society, really, for that to be diminished. So, you know, I think we want to see this impact society more positively. And so we feel like there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, as someone who has spent well over 2 years also providing educational materials and onboarding folks, developers, high level, non-technical, very technical people into the Ethereum ecosystem, I think I do understand where you're coming from. And as someone who has also seen the results of like seeing people move from 0 to 1 to 5 to 10 to 100, it does matter to have these types of communities. It does matter to have these types of initiative at the back of Ethereum, ensuring that we move beyond, you know, just a very, very technical, decentralized product to an ecosystem that is actually going to change the world. So yes, I do really understand where you're coming from. So Max, you know, want to hear what you think. Well, not what you think. What would actually happen if Aestus ceases to exist today?
The beauty of decentralization is that not too much would happen if Aestus ceased to exist. But nonetheless, I think I agree with the spirit of Jonathan's contribution. What makes Ethereum and this part of the ecosystem great is the diversity, and you know, Aestus comes out of the solo staking and home staking community, and yeah, if Aestus were to disappear, there'd be a bit more censorship on Ethereum, and there'd be slightly less competition. The block builders would get a little bit richer, but it wouldn't be the end of the world, because we're just one small part of a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think everyone does have a role to play, regardless of, you know, the skill, if you will. So Lanski, about DappNode, what would happen to the Ethereum ecosystem if DappNode ceases to exist today?
I guess it depends really whether you mean the team or magically all of the machines just vanished out of existence and people had to scramble to find another way. I think that if the team disappeared, nothing would happen, because everything we do is open source, and potentially another team would be able to take it and keep publishing updates for all thousands of node operators, all the maybe tens of thousands of validators, to keep operating. uninterruptedly. And if what happened was that the machine, the software, just magically gets erased from the face of the earth, fortunately, and as Jonathan said before, it's getting easier to run nodes yourself. So there are alternatives to that. There would be potentially what I consider and what many consider the easiest way of running a validator, and a node would appear, and all of these people running it would have to scramble to find other ways. Some of them would be able to use ETHDocker and do it themselves. Some of them would use other tools, and some of them would need to forcefully exit because they do not have the technical capability or the willingness to more actively maintain it in a more complex way than what DappNode allows you to do. But luckily, hopefully that won't happen. And even if it happens, the team disappears. Somebody would take the baton and cover and fulfill that role for sure.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
No, I mean, I didn't want to interrupt you. I think that's a good point you guys are both making about the open source things with all of these projects. And I mean, that's true for ETHStaker too. Like, everything we do is published on GitHub. You know, the open source tools we make, the knowledge base. So yeah, at some level, like, I think we all say, hey, this has been, everything we've done has been given to the commons, right? And so I think that's an interesting thing to consider, because it's what we value it to that level, that everyone should have open access to it. And I guess it's interesting because it reminds me of the Octant. You guys, what's your tagline for this Epoch? It's like Octant is for everybody or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, like, it's pretty cool that I think the projects in this whole group, this whole cohort, are like wanting to, I mean, they live up to that. There's a lot of like open source compatibility with this. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I think, you know, if we look at maybe the teams, the work that you guys are doing is so important that maybe if like the teams or the communities disappeared, they would be filled up again almost immediately. But if the technology, let's say, behind of what you're doing, I don't know, if staking disappeared, or like the hardware to do staking, or like the relays disappeared, then that would be a completely different story. Like, I think Ethereum would look very, very different from what it looks today, and I don't think it would be nice, to be honest. So thank you for all the work that you guys do, and thank you for contributing it as open source. That's always something that inspires me so much. Shifting gears here a little bit, a couple of you mentioned upgrades and how Ethereum sort of looks in the future. I know there are some debates there as well, as you mentioned also, Jonathan. I would love to hear what are your takes on what's coming next. That's, of course, maybe more relevant to your project, but also to the wider ecosystem. Maybe things that you're very excited about, maybe things that you're not super excited about. Max, do you want to kick it off?
Sorry, I there was a little bit of a problem with my connection. Can you say the last part of the question again?
Yeah, just things about the upcoming upgrades that excite you, or things that don't excite you as much.
Okay, so Glamsterdam scheduled towards the end of 2026. This is probably the biggest protocol upgrade in the last 4 years for the stuff that the three participants in this room really care about, staking. It's exciting. It's going to make Ethereum scale. That should allow us to onboard way more users who can do way more stuff without transaction prices going up. It has some complicated impacts on the part of the ecosystem that I work on in particular. And it's exciting, it's interesting, and it's somewhat unnerving because I don't think it's really at all clear what's going to happen. Currently, relays are the de facto standard for how a proposer gets a bid. and now there may be 3 different channels: an in-protocol path, a direct path, and a relay path. And it's going to be super, it's going to be super interesting to see how that plays out. And beyond the kind of us, the believing in what Ethereum stands for stuff, there is also just this element that Ethereum is endlessly technically, intellectually fascinating, and it's what kind of keeps me hanging around it.
Sweet, thank you, Max. What about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I would echo ePBS and Glamsterdam. Everything coming there is something that we're paying a lot of close attention to, because when you think about your validator and your node chugging along, it's going to significantly change some of the things that are happening there with the block production. And we're working currently on some things from the ETHStaker team about like understanding what that block production sequence looks like. There's actually, if you go to our YouTube channel, there was a good talk from Terrence from the Off-Chain Labs team. He works on Prism. He was at ECC and talked about what this newly architected block production sequence looks like in the ePBS world. And so we're also, on our side too, working to create better educational materials that stakers can use as a point of reference to understand like what's actually happening now in post Glamsterdam for us. So I'm excited about that and having like a better understanding of those things in the protocol, and like how, like helping people understand like how it's better too. So like that's one of the things we do is try to help articulate these like kind of technical, maybe somewhat complicated protocol changes that are happening, and help it be like broadly understood by those participating. I'm also excited about the things happening like beyond that, some of the things on like the Lean Ethereum roadmap. Lean Ethereum is everything involving ZK VMs and proving and quantum resistance that the team in like the ETH proofs community and the things they're working on, because there's, when you talk about architectural changes, like it's quite significant. And I'm interested in better understanding that and seeing like what positive impacts it can bring to how everything works, because I think ultimately that can democratize even further. But we just have to get it right. Like there's a lot of things to get right in terms of incentives with how that works, and not make it worse, but make it better than what we have today. For the viability of a solo staker, what does it mean to be a prover? If anybody wanted to do that. And so I'm excited about those things coming to kind of a little bit more longer term past. But yeah, lots of exciting things that we're paying attention to.
Sweet, thank you, Jonathan. Lanski, what do you think? What are you excited about? What are you not so excited about? I think that's also sometimes interesting to hear.
Well, I'm not excited about Issuance reduction. That's I made that clear before. But yeah, things that do get me. I still believe in Ethereum, and I still believe that, as it has been mentioned before, that there is a lot of work being made towards maintaining the properties that make Ethereum so important as a technology, as a sanctuary technology. But yeah, like I'm still very excited, and most of the things that I'm excited about, especially in the short term, like Glamsterdam, Lean Ethereum, they have been already mentioned. So I'm just going to add that I'm also excited about improvements on the wallet side and privacy, on private reads, on RPCs. There's on statelessness. I think as the usability of Ethereum is sort of also like a very delicate balance between having more features, more self-sovereign features, and making them accessible and easier to use, right? Like everybody agrees that privacy is a thing that we would love to have, but then there are a lot of trade-offs on usability that we need to do so this privacy actually happens. And then seeing this delicate balance is something that excites me a lot. And I think we're working with the Kohaku team of the Ethereum Foundation to to provide with the wallets with a network of decentralized DappNodes that will provide those private reads, right? And that will act as RPCs, and that's I think the right paths for having an even better, more private Ethereum are also happening. So potentially this is what hasn't been mentioned before, yeah. Otherwise, you took all the good stuff, guys.
They did. But I do think I'm sensing some concerns around the incentives and economic alignment. And I think Lanski has really strong opinions there. And if you want to dive into that a little bit, but obviously everyone in the room can chip in at any point in time. But that's something I think I want us to just dive into a little bit and talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be happy to hear Jonathan.
Yeah. Well, basically, you know, from ETHStaker, we like to kind of do what we can to be like shining neutral light on these different things. And it's like the way that, you know, I heard about issuance maybe a few years ago, where it first started popping off as a topic with the research from people at the Ethereum Foundation, is that there's kind of these concerns with like, well, if you look a few steps into the future, you know, I'm boiling things way down from some like very technical writings that are on the issuance.wtf website that's been put together. But basically, you know, if you get to 100% stake, you know, there's maybe some big problems that come into play with the way that the network functions. I personally feel like, yeah, maybe there's some issues there that need to be addressed, but it's like, to me, it's about how. And I don't know for sure, like, is it about just implementing, you know, slapping some number on and saying that's our new issuance, you know, having kind of like a new Federal Reserve that just serves Ethereum? Like, we don't want to recreate the systems that we have in the old world, you know, and just do it on a blockchain, right? And I think that that's why it's important to have the debates. It's important to have the things voiced. And I was kind of curious, Lanski, like what you think, how you think the topic should be addressed too, because I think that a lot of people come down in the camp of like, we've got to do something now. It's super urgent. We should not do anything. It's designed well. It needs to be like reliable and hardened in this topic, or we should wait and see and give it space and see what happens. And I guess my feeling, I guess just before I give it off to anyone else, is like, I think I'm a little bit in like the wait and see what's going on, and like, are there any like creative hybrid approaches to dealing with it, like a stair step of any sort? Like, if you think about the way we've dealt with gas and blob increases, we've put together like a schedule of things, and we've said, okay, we're going to take like a baby step that's maybe not doing the full batch of everything that someone might want to do with blobs or gas, but it's like taking a step in a direction and then technically evaluating and seeing the body of impacts that has. And like with Fusaka, with the blob schedule, I think that's been informative and like a pretty wise approach. But I just don't know personally if that approach works for issuance, because does it come off as more tinkering? You know, so I don't know if I can point to like, this is the exact right thing to do, you know, from everything I've seen right now. But I think it's important to be having a vibrant debate and discussion going on. So that's sort of where I land right now with it all. But yeah, I'm really curious to your guys' thoughts too, because it is one of those topics where there's many different opinions out there.
Yeah. I like, yeah, we didn't see, maybe I'm there as well. I am sympathetic to the issuance debate, and we can see it like it. I mean, we're seeing it like the queues to enter the validator set have never been higher. I think they peaked in February or before, like 70 days in order to enter your validator, to let your validator enter. There is an influx, even though it's not from solo stakers. The stake is centralizing, and the things that the issuance, let's reduce issuance field, are putting forth as arguments, they are happening. Ethereum is becoming more and more centralized, and and the power that these entities have is also higher. So I am sympathetic to this, but just reducing issuance is not going to solve it. And in fact, it introduces a series. On the first order consequences, it solves a problem and generates other problems. And these problems are downstream second order consequences of having not enough incentives in certain things. So maybe my thinking, which doesn't, it's a very complex topic, but maybe my thinking is towards, let's look at what other roles can be fulfilled by solo stakers. Can we break down the RPC the RPC business and turn it into a decentralized business? Can we make nodes subscribe to a peer-to-peer list where they advertise their capabilities, and then wallets just read that list and randomly select a node or a series of them in order to retrieve their data? And there is some sort of payment in here. Now, this is half-baked. I do not know what the incentive scheme is, who pays for this, whether the wallet, whether the user. I'm not entirely sure who pays for this. But finding creative ways of doing incentive alignment here, this is something that's not being done in parallel, and it's not attached to the issuance debate. Another thing is partial state and statelessness and partial state serving. When we break down the state, we will need people to keep the state of certain contracts. You'll be able to operate on Ethereum, but you'll not be able to retrieve information on Ethereum. So this partial state can be served by nodes as well. And this is extremely valuable for applications. If you go into Aave right now and you need to see the state of the Aave smart contract, at some point you need a connection to an RPC, you need to know what's happening there. And if this state can be served by a solo staker that also advertises their state capabilities, the state that what contracts states is it keeping, it can be much faster. And this is a very, very valuable service. So to me, what's missing in the issuance space is this incentive alignment. Like, yes, there are problems that reducing issuance potentially could make smaller, not fully disappear, because as long as there is a 0.1% of incentive to validate, a large holder would prefer to hold this yield-bearing asset instead of the non-yield-bearing asset, right? You are being inflated away if you don't have the yield-bearing asset. But anyway, that's it's another topic. But the thing that I want to maybe let people think about is that those two things, this incentives debate, should be looked at as an incentives, not only an issuance debate, but also as an incentive debate. And how can we sort of preserve this decentralization through maybe other mechanisms that are not issuance?
Sweet. Thank you, Lanski. We're close to the top of the hour. So I want to give you guys the opportunity also to talk with the Octant community and the voters for this round. What's next for your projects? What you're participating in this round. Why do you need the funding that you're asking for? Let's start with you, Max, if you want.
Sure. I think, as I said at the top of the call, we've had the privilege of receiving funding from Octant for, I think it's getting on for 4 or 5 rounds now, and essentially you are paying the infrastructure bills to support up to 1 million validators, connecting to the relay, serving millions of dollars of value a month, tens of millions a year, to a diverse, geo-distributed set of users. Those costs are going up with time, especially as the protocol becomes more sophisticated and the number of users increases. And there are new challenges on the horizon like ePBS, which are, as we've all discussed, are kind of exciting and bring new, is really a new era for Ethereum. But bottom line really is that probably without Octant we would cease to exist. So please support us.
Please support Aestus Relay on Epoch 12.
Thank
you, Max. Thank you for coming on. Jonathan, what about you?
Like I said at the very beginning, ETHStaker definitely relies on this kind of community funding. So we are very grateful for being included in this, and encourage you to consider supporting us with your allocation. And I think, when you look at like the impact of just ongoing an active community and the living support, I guess I would invite people to come next week. We're actually doing a community call with the Octant team and with the Golem staking team on actually almost exactly a week from right now. I think it's actually like 10 a.m. on Thursday next week that we're doing this. So anyway, I'm excited about that, and you guys can see more about like how this community operates, how ETHStaker as a nonprofit operates to shine light on good things, and that we believe it's important enough to keep going, and we do rely heavily on this kind of resource. So we are grateful.
We're grateful too for all the work that you guys are doing. Thank you, Jonathan. Vote for ETHStaker. Put it in your ballot at Octant.app. Lanski, what about DappNode?
In a very similar fashion, we do rely as well on donations and on grants of this style. DappNode wouldn't exist if it wasn't because of that. And in fact, DappNode has recently, we don't have a business model. We do sell hardware, which hasn't been enough to support the team. And we recently had to lay off 60% of our team in order to be able to ensure that for the next 2 years, we have enough runway to maintain DappNode for the users and for anybody that wants to start staking or that wants to participate in the ecosystem, just use it with a couple of clicks, that are able to do so in a simple way. And Octant is a crucial piece of us being able to continue to support our current users, to continue to support Ethereum, to continue to lobby, to continue to participate in the ecosystem, lobbying for decentralization. And thank you, Octant, for being so generous, because like this money that comes from the Golem Foundation could be captured and de-staked and sold and split out among the GLM holders. And instead, you decided to set up a way to support projects like the three of us right here, and make Ethereum better as a whole. So all goes back to you, and you supporting the GLM holder, and now thanks to this round also the ETH holder, to support public goods. So thank you, Octant, for doing that.
Awesome. No, again, thank you guys for all the work. It's totally deserved, and hope more people would do it so that these things wouldn't be underfunded. But thank you so much also for coming on. For the audience out there, thank you for also watching. Aestus, ETHStaker, DappNode are participating in Epoch 12 of our funding round. So go to Octant.app, check out the new application that we have. As Lanski mentioned, now you can also do direct ETH donations, and you don't need to be staking GLM for 3 months in order to participate. You can do it straight away. So super excited about that. And thank you guys. And thank you, Yinka, for being my co-host today. Do you want to say some final words before we wrap up?
Always. Thank you for the opportunity. And like I would always say, Octant is goated. Like Lanski said, huge props, great work the team is doing, and just shout out to the team. That's all I have to say, man.
Shout out to you all. Shout out to the audience. Thank you all. And see you tomorrow for another live stream at the same time. Have a good one,
Awesome.
everyone.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.